of all the rotten luck. As I came down here to the basement, I brought my handy cam and a glass of water with me, but somehow I've managed to lose the glass of water. Now I could just go ahead and go upstairs and pour myself another one, but that's like upstairs. And right now I'm pretty sure there's a marauding furhead loose right above me in the living room playing video games, and it'd probably be best to stay out of his way. So, since the handy cam seems to have made it down here, well, what better time to make a video? Hello there everyone, uxwbill here once again. Got a little prize from the recycling center and thrift store, the one that I visited a couple times in the past, the one that, despite collecting computers for recycling, is not supposed to sell them. Well, as you can see, they have yet again. Here is a Dell Dimension 9100 personal computer. It amazes me how well the cash and carry principle works. That is to say, I walked up to the sales desk where the cash register is, said I'd give them some money for it, and snuck out the back way with some help from their staff to raise up the garage door at the back of the building. Now, I have certainly taken some heat for my housekeeping over the time, and I'll be the first to admit that I am not the world's best housekeeper, but I do take some degree of pride in where I live and what it looks like, though I'm very firmly of the belief that a house is for living in and not looking at, or if it is for looking at it is secondary to living in it. So that's why sometimes things are in a little bit of a state of disarray. A little bit. Of course, this is the basement. Nobody comes down here anyway except for me, maybe the occasional key keeper, the furhead, and my mother never makes it much past the laundry room. But as you can see, this particular computer, if it survives the video compression and encoding process, is just absolutely filthy. Now, I don't consider it appropriate to comment on the condition of somebody else's house, but what we can very clearly see is that whoever kept this computer was not overly troubled by maintaining a clean house. This would make my house at its worst look like it was cleaned up to be as neat as a pin inspected under a scanning electron microscope. I have no idea what this is. I think it's actually some kind of a Coke spill. To tell you the truth, in all the years I've worked on computers, I have come across a few that just, I didn't want to touch them. And this is almost one of them. So why did I buy this thing? Well, it just seemed too good to let it sit and rot at the recycling center, and I figured, well, there's no harm in asking, and indeed there was not. Amazingly, this thing does work. Go ahead and take a look at the insides here. You can see there's a lot of dust in here, though by no means the most dust that I have ever seen. The dustiest personal computer, I believe the record for the dustiest personal computer I ever saw, is held by an IBM Personal System 2 Model 90 system. That machine was so dusty I couldn't even see the motherboard in it. Wow. To my great amazement, despite the fact that this thing is filthy and grimy and dusty all over, it actually does work. It didn't work at first. It wasn't very happy. When I went to turn it on, the diagnostic lights on the front only illuminated the first 3 lights solidly, and the video card BIOS posted an initialization message, but it wouldn't finish, and rarely, if ever, is that a good sign. Usually it means that something on the motherboard or the video card or somewhere in between, some portion of circuitry in the machine is seriously pooched. So I started by doing the thing that you should always do when you work on any personal computer that doesn't want to finish starting up, and that is to greatly simplify the configuration. Pulled the modem, pulled the video card, tried another random video card. You can see this is a very high performance type. Certainly more powerful than the ATI Radeon card that's in here now. But what ultimately brought this machine back to life was disconnecting both of the optical drives from the parallel ATA cable inside this machine. Then it started up the power on self-test and would have begun to boot if I'd have let it. But I made these folks a promise that if they were willing to sell me computers under the table, that I would just hit them immediately with the disk erasure software. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. But I thought it was worthwhile making a short little video about this machine. It's had a little action at the recycling center. I know they throw these things around with pretty reckless abandon. You can see they bent the heck out of the card cage right there. I think a few good whacks from a hammer would probably fix that. I'm surprised they didn't pop the modem out of the slot. I mean, the back panel of these BTX Dell machines is not exactly known as a pillar of strength, but no, the modem was still firmly plugged into its slot. In fact, when I popped this off, it came loose with a pretty good bang, and a number of the slot blanks popped out. As you can see, this is a thoroughly weenie modern computer. It's completely legacy free. I'll go ahead and get that lint ball out of there. Let's go ahead and shed some light on things. But you can see where the artifacts for a parallel port, a serial port, and onboard video were certainly considered. They're probably used in whatever Optiplex model is based off of this same system board. However, this is not a totally weenie modern computer. There is a little hope for it yet, because down here next to the floppy drive connector is a small header that is designed to accept a plug-in adapter that fits into one of the bus slots over here. What that's utilized for is the provision of a PS2 mouse and keyboard port and a second serial port. It's ordinarily something that you see on the Optiplex. I don't even know if this machine's BIOS would support it, but I assume that since the connector is there, it probably does. So I've got to keep this video pretty short because the Handycam does not exactly have a surplus of battery life at the moment, and using the light runs it down a lot faster. Also, I'm almost out of tape, so in lieu of uploading a real and hopefully more interesting video than this, I'm going to take this thing out to the garage and see what kind of a dust cloud I can raise. Then we'll have a power up and a good old-fashioned disc wiping. And we'll give this thing a new lease on life, doing something else of an interesting nature. I also have one of those adapters from the small form factor Optiplex GX620 that I recently picked up at the Hamfest. Because this is the small form factor machine, the PS2 signals for mouse and keyboard are combined into the same connector, but I figure this will probably work. It certainly plugs into the connector on the motherboard, so the only real question is whether or not the machine's BIOS actually supports and enables that option, and if subsequently the operating system can actually pick up on it. So back in just a moment, everybody. Now this is most definitely the kind of job for which one of those little refrigerant-based duster cans is definitely not the right choice. In fact, cleaning out a mess like this would be just a little bit on the daunting side for one of those things to deal with. So I actually have an air compressor that I use for this purpose. I actually bought it for this purpose, about a decade ago, when I realized that it would be a heck of a lot cheaper and much easier to use than those refrigerant-based duster cans are. And I continue to use it for that purpose to this very day. However, if you plan to do the same thing, it's vitally important that you make sure the air feed that you're using is clean, dry, and as oil-free as possible. It will absolutely not do your computer any good to fire high-speed droplets of water under components on the motherboard. The same is true if your compressor of choice is leaking oil, an excessive amount of oil, into its output. Now, headphone users, consider yourself warned. The part of this video that's coming right up is going to get very loud. I couldn't actually find my blowgun. I like saying that on video. I have no idea why, but I do. But before we get to that, go ahead and just take one last look at the impressive amount of filth that is packed up inside this computer. Look at those front panel vents. Look at the microprocessor cooling fan. See that big wad of dust right there in the middle? And if you give me just a second here, we'll go ahead and take a look inside the microprocessor heatsink, thanks to the magic of the scanning electron microscope. Nope, amazingly enough, a Handycam will fit right in there. A Digital 8 one, no less. It was pretty good. I really like these things. Sony really did their homework on them. I'm going to be sad if this thing ever decides to pack it in for good. Okay, headphone users, this is your last warning. I don't know if I can do this one-handed or not, but I'm going to give it a try. So turn down the volume right now. I'm only going to give you a couple seconds. That definitely left a pretty good dust cloud hanging in the air just now. And to look inside this computer, you almost wouldn't necessarily believe it was even the same machine that it was just a couple of minutes ago before I got done blowing the insides out. Looks brand new. Looks amazing. I think it'll make a complete recovery. I've actually got the cover for the case sitting downstairs soaking in the laundry tub. I really hope that maybe this was a child's computer or something and was therefore exposed to all kinds of kid grime, but I just can't quite bring myself to think that. Here I am back in the basement again, and I just got through using one ESD handling regulation compliant computer grade data hammer to go ahead and straighten out the expansion slot retaining bracket, separator bars, and also the blank slot bracket area. It's not quite perfect, and I don't think I could ever probably get it to be completely perfect, but it's certainly better than it was previously. I must say I'm actually fairly surprised to report that the PS2 keyboard, mouse, and serial port adapter is actually functional in this particular system. Got it hooked up to a genuine IBM Model M here, and it works just perfectly to go through the system setup utility. And looking at the event log, I think it can be said that in times past this machine was definitely a little bit unhappy about its fan situation, if not its thermal one. I can only imagine how loud it might have gotten to running with all that dust clogging the front panel fan. But now there's only one thing left to do, and that's to go ahead and clear all the data off the hard drive and find a new purpose for this computer, which seems to be working just beautifully now. I am both extremely surprised and impressed to report that at least one, if not both, of the optical drives on this machine actually work 100% perfectly. The DVD-ROM drive has a little bit of personality at times. It's randomly popped the tray out a few times, but it worked well enough to go ahead and kick off the hard disk wiping routine. So thank you for watching, and feel free to leave a comment if you have one.